Hello, welcome back. My name is Daniel Gomali. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Hometown Hero. Today I'm going to talk about a game that I played against Eldar Gasanov. And this was at Hastings Chess Congress, so we can continue the depressing theme of how badly I did at Hastings. And this game was played in round 4, so it's getting towards the New Year's Day. It's actually New Year's Eve, so the final game of 2024. I hadn't lost in about 37 FIDE rated games before this game, so I'm quite proud of that record. But it all came tumbling down because in 3 out of my next 4 black games, I managed to lose. It's always difficult when you're black against good players because they put you under pressure in the opening. And often you don't completely equalise. In this game, I didn't come close to equalising. So talking about Hastings, I was on the park bench early on in the tournament. And I was thinking to myself, how often have I played in Hastings, right? I was thinking about all these years. We used to go to Pig in Paradise. Used to be a big social event. A lot of people drinking. I wish I hadn't drunk so much. I probably could have had more wins at Hastings. I have come equal first 1 year, and I also won a Challengers 1 year. I got a GM norm. When I got my second GM norm, it was around about 2003. And I beat a Latvian grandmaster called Norman Mises in the final round. So it used to be a challenger and a premier. I was playing in a challenger, which was like the B tournament. And I was black against Norman Mises, and I beat him with black to get my second GM norm. Very, very happy result for me. But there were many years where it was just like a haze. You were drinking so much, and you know, I remember having almost like a panic attack at the board 1 year. That was probably on something like New Year's Day or something like that. Or the day after New Year's Day, you're just drinking too much. And yeah, I was just thinking, you know, like 20 years of my life, and I was just getting older. And I was sitting there on the park bench one day. It was really stormy early on in Hastings. And I was sitting there on the park bench. And I was thinking, my God, how many years have I played Hastings for? I played here over 20 years. And same old miserable weather. It's still got its sort of unique charm. It's got this beautiful, unique charm to it, Hastings. But I felt like, yeah, I'm just getting older. I'm getting older, and I'm getting towards the end of my life almost, or certainly the end of my chess career. And it's kind of scary, and you kind of think, well, hang on a minute, where did my youth go? I'm 47. I'm sat here on a park bench. And there's no middle ground. I started off, I was young. I played it when the first year I played it was 1995. I was a young guy. I was like 17. No, 1995. I would have been 19. Sorry, I was born in 76. And now I'm an old man. I'm like one of the older players. I'm like a senior player. I'm one of the people who've played Hastings for most number of years. So that kind of depressed me. I played this guy Gasanov. And he surprised me in the opening. I was expecting him. Let's get rid of these stupid arrows. How do we get rid of these stupid arrows? I don't want to see these arrows, right? Anyway, he surprised me with his D5 move, which I thought was quite a clever move. He's just trying to clog up the position. So I went here and I did something which is very typical of me, especially when I'm rusty and out of practice. I start misremembering stuff. And here I played B5 thinking, yeah, I've seen this line before. In reality, I hadn't studied this for many, many years. I knew there was some kind of B5 in some line, but I couldn't remember exactly where. So I played B5, which is not a terrible move, but it kind of leads to a very sharp position, which I wasn't ready for. And he took. And now here I probably should have just taken back the pawn. If he takes the knight, you go Queen A5. He comes back. Bishop B7. It seems to be okay for black. Not great, but probably okay. I mean, maybe he plays other moves. I mean, certainly here he doesn't have to take the pawn. He can play other moves. He could play, for example, A3 is a move. Maybe even E4, B4, E5 is an option. Take on F6, also possible. I don't know. Probably that's not the best option. But in this particular scenario, I took on d5 because I felt like that was the most consequent variation. He took with a knight. Now, this is where the Spidey signal should have been going off. And I think if I'd have been more informed, if I'd played more over last... The problem was, you know, I know it's easy to use excuses, but the problem was I hadn't played since really, I hadn't played much since October. I played Guernsey and then I played Scarborough. And after that, I hardly played at all in November. I hardly played at all in December until Hastings. So you've got almost 2 months of rustiness. I played the Florencia, that was about it. It was only 2 games. And I wasn't warmed up. You know, I feel like, especially as I get older, rustiness affects me more and more. I'm kind of an intuitive player. It takes me a while to see ideas. I'm instinctive. I'm intuitive. You know, I get into a kind of frame where I start to play well. When I'm on form, you know, it takes me a while. But here, I mean, particularly in this game, you could see that I was just really not at the races because my next move looks extremely dubious for a very obvious reason. And it was only after I played it I started to realise why it's such a bad move. So Black could obviously play this move, for example. Doesn't look like a great kind of position with the double pawns. Pawn on d7 is weak, but it's playable. You know, often you just want to avoid disaster. If you could just make, you know, even if you go to a worse position, the whole point about chess often is just to make it hard for your opponent. Just make it difficult. In this game, I just made it too easy for my opponent. You know, you could also consider this move. And this isn't too bad for Black. It's not a great position. I was afraid of this move. Again, it shows I wasn't calculating correctly because what I missed was after takes. I saw this variation. I saw Rook C1. And I thought, oh, that's bad news because if I go here, he goes here. But I should have taken that variation on. Again, I think if I was you know, if I'd played a bit more, I would have seen that Bishop B4 here was playable. And just, you know, you're more than in the game. But going back to this position, I think White can actually just go Rook B1 and be clearly better. So I saw this Bishop D2 variation. I thought, I don't like the look of this. This doesn't look good. So I kind of thought, right, okay, so my only move is Bishop G7. As soon as I played it, I thought, well, hang on a minute. He can go Bishop F4. And also then I started to realise, actually, he can just take on F6. And he's got a very nasty follow-up. So he did take on F6. He fought for quite a while. He saw some resources that I had that I hadn't seen. In fairness to Eldar, who, by the way, I think he's originally from Russia. I was speaking to Chernayev, and Chernayev was saying, even though Gasanov was listed as Ukraine, he's kind of like half Russian, half Azerbaijani. And he lived in Moscow for many years, according to Chernayev, who is from Moscow, I believe. No, I'm not sure Chernayev is from. I think he's spent time in Moscow, but he's actually from somewhere on the White Sea. Anyway, he knows all these kind of Russian type people, so he knows the score. But Gasanov is listed as Ukraine, right? But he lives in England, I believe. Not sure where he lives actually. That's another mystery that needs solving. Maybe Eldar is watching this himself. He could tell us where he lives. I'll go around his house. I'm only kidding. Right. But yeah, he played a nice game. But yeah, I think what he did was definitely the practical choice. You know, and I was afraid of it at the board. I was sitting there already feeling depressed. I saw what was coming. I was feeling depressed and I was thinking the game's over already. But he could have probably played Bishop F4, which is what I was originally fearful of. But after castles, I thought, well, this is actually okay because if he goes here, you go Knight H5, attacking the bishop. So at first you think, well, Knight C7 is winning. But then Knight H5 actually is not that great, right? Black might even end up being better. Very unclear position. But the problem is he can play a move like this. Bishop A5 and I'm still in trouble. It's still a very bad position. So he could and probably should have played bishop f4, but he took, which I think from a practical perspective is a good decision. Because now the onus is on black. So he played queen. So by this point I'd seen what was coming. I'd missed queen d5 earlier, which is shocking to play bishop g7. And missed that he's got this idea of queen d5. I think if I'm more warmed up, I probably would have seen, I'm sure he would have seen that move. It's very, very poor for a 2400 player. Ironically, I hadn't lost in about 30 odd games before this game. You know, I was quite proud of. I hadn't lost in 37 games, FIDE rated games, against all sorts of players. But it all came tumbling down, as now I lost 3 out of my last 4 games. It's a bit like buses, right? Chess losses are a little bit like buses. But also, it depends who you're playing against. Obviously, if you're playing 37 games in a row against Magnus Carlsen or AlphaZero, you're probably unlikely to be unbeaten for 37 games in a row. So a lot of it is about the opposition. I was playing good players at Hastings. You know, and when you're black against good players, it can be very difficult. So this position, very, very critical position, and I really should have spent time. I had ages on the clock. I probably had about an hour and 20 minutes. So, psychologically, I just gave up at this point. So he's going queen d5. Okay, the game's going to last not very long. Who cares? Let's lose. Let's get down the pub. Celebrate New Year's. That's not the way to look at the game. This is where I should have really started, like, you know, getting stuck into the variations. So there's a very interesting variation that black can play here, which he saw in the game, I think. He mentions variation afterwards. Queen c7. Now I'm threatening bishop b7. So white's hand, I think, is more or less false. If you allow bishop b7, then, well, clearly, you know, you've not done a very good job here. Black has very good compensation. Am I pawn down here? I think I'm a pawn down. But I've got very good play, and you wouldn't go queen c4 here because black will exchange and take on g2, and you end up losing the rook on h1. So white would probably play a move like queen b3, but then I've got very good play. I can probably just castle. Maybe I can consider playing a6, try and grabbing some squares. If b6, I'll just move the queen somewhere. Maybe here, and then try and bring the knight out. I should be doing reasonably well. But of course, the critical variation is to take the rook. And that is what he should play. Now, when you're in a back to the wall situation, you've got to try and find any kind of variation that will keep the game going. Now, I think I did look at this, and I think actually in the game I even saw this move, bishop c3. I think I just didn't believe in it. You can try this move, and it just doesn't really work. But if you throw in bishop c3, it actually becomes very tricky for white. And the computer actually already says that the game is more or less equal. So you take. Yeah, and so there's 2 variations. You either take the bishop immediately, or you play king to d1. So he goes king d1. Sorry, in this position, there's 2 variations. You either take the bishop, or you play king d1. I think king d1 just allows queen d6. No, sorry, you go bishop b7 first, yeah. And then, yeah, and then if you take, then there's queen d6 check. Maybe, or there's something, I can't remember. What happens after this? Yeah, it's very tricky position. Very difficult. Clearly black has put himself under a lot of pressure to actually even be forced to find his only moves, right? It doesn't feel like very sensible play. So maybe here I can play check. And then something like this. No, hang on. B7's hanging. So it just goes to show how badly I've analysed this. What is the variation here, right? Alright, so you go here, and then you take, and then you just castle. Ah, okay, and now suddenly, yeah, so this can backfire on white, you know, if you're getting too cocky. So you go here, and apparently some variation like this is very unclear. Fascinating position. Because black is down material technically. So what have I got? I've got a queen, knight and rook. So essentially I've got a queen for a rook and 2 bishops. But on the other hand, in some practical sense, I'd probably prefer to be black because the white king is in the centre. So yeah, white also has an extra pawn as well. So essentially white is material up. Yeah, as it says there, it's +3. Right? Rook, 2 bishops, and a pawn, you know, for the queen, that's a +3 edge. But, on the other hand, this position is assessed as very unclear by the engine because the white king is in the open. And it's very easy for white to go wrong here, I think. Moves like h4 are possible, and then activate the rook and try and bring the rook over d3. You could probably spend hours analysing this position and not come to any legitimate conclusion. Or on the other hand, you could just turn the engine on and the engine would probably tell you exactly what's going on. But the other variations, if they take, now you go check here. You go check here, and there's only one move here that is sufficient for black. So you might want to pause the computer and say, what should black play here? Because there's only one good move here. Every other move is bad. I think this move is equal, according to the computer. Again, you've got to see these variations. You've got to at least try. Even if you don't see all this, you've got to at least try to fight, you know. And I didn't try to fight in the game. I just gave up. You know, I just resigned myself to my fate. The move is d5. And that activates the bishop. And apparently black is okay. Apparently it's equal. No idea why. But none of that happened in the game because I essentially just gave up the fight. After queen d5 I castle, which is a really bad move. Now I am losing. And I thought about, yeah, this is why I probably could have found this bishop c3, queen c7, bishop c3 stuff. Because I actually thought about this move here. With the idea of giving check. But I don't think it works. And but that was showing how desperate I realised the situation was. The reason it doesn't work is you go here. Okay, there's a few, yeah, apparently it doesn't quite work. You come here, but this is maybe a better try than the game. Maybe after bishop takes b2 he can also play other moves. Yeah, he can also go rook b1, but I should have probably tried that as a desperate. You know, you got to at least try to get active. In the game, I just allowed, you know, this is just a really bad sequence. Because I saw he had queen e4 as well. But I still allowed this position. Just my only logic was, it's going to take him a while to get the kingside out. But the problem is one of his kingside developing moves, e3, will come with tempo because it will hit the queen on b5. So although he's slightly behind in development, the extra rook is just too much. You know, at the moment I don't even have a pawn for it. Right? I can take on b2, I've got a pawn for a rook, but you know, pawns aren't going to be enough for a rook, right? So it's just a winning position for white. I went here, he went rook b1, the game just ended very, very undramatically. Queen, bishop c4. And then he went knight f3. So the reason I said it was a dream game, this was a dream game, was because that the night before I actually had a dream. I was chatting to a friend of mine and mentioned the game that he was having. I was saying, oh yeah, I think you've got a good style for this player, blah, blah, blah. And he said, yeah, but I'm starting to piece down. And it occurred to me, what do you mean a piece down? I've never had a dream where someone's lost a piece before, right? You know, because often I have dreams about chess and something, because chess is such an important part of my life, right? Probably most chess players will tell you this. Most decent chess players, or people who play a lot, would probably tell you they have dreams about chess. Either dreams where they're playing, or dreams where they're chatting to a friend who plays chess, or some kind of dream about their tournament. Yeah, please comment down below about any dreams that you've had about chess. Or what are your chess dreams? But in this particular scenario, in this dream, I had this dream about somebody losing a piece. It was a friend of mine. It was their game. But it's funny that, ironically, the very next day, I lost a piece very early on. I lost my rook. So it's weird how it kind of predicted the future. Anyway, I'm going to quickly show you another game that I played, which is the very next round. And no, you know what? I'm going to save that for another video, because that's a special game as well. So I'm just going to make this a 20-minute video. That was my game against Gasanov. Thanks a lot for watching. And good game. Well played, Mr. Kasanov.